Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome everybody to episode number 87 at CBD Talk Podcasts. Great to have you back again. And tonight I have a friend with us that I actually got to spend some time with recently. We did a panel together, the CBD Mountain Expo, and Chase was on the panel. I was moderating, and it was a panel on white labeling products. So very informative panel, and it was just a natural progression to have him on the podcast. So welcome, Chase. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So how about we start out like I usually do, and you tell us a little bit about what brought you to the industry.
Okay. Well, I guess it's kind of a long story, not a super long story. But I really knew from a young age that I wanted to go into my own line of work. My father's an investment banker. My mother has done extremely well for herself in corporate America. And I did not really want to do that, the whole 9 to 5 paper pushing sort of lifestyle. And so in high school and college, I started my entrepreneurial journey and, started a tea company with my friend in college. That was like my first personal venture. And from there, I actually went on to, um, build a company in the financial tech market. And those were, really in my years in Boulder, Colorado. And during that time, I got heavily personally invested into cannabis, not just because it helped me medicinally. I've had a couple of spinal fusions due to hockey and other sports related injuries. And in doing so, I met some OGs, as we'll call them, in the cannabis industry. Some people that, really, really helped propel the industry forward early on in its infancy in Colorado, at least. And I learned everything from cultivation to extraction to just the business of cannabis. And over the years, I ended up straying back and forth to cannabis as I pioneered other ventures with multiple business partners, and eventually it led me back to CBD and hemp. Um, and this was, about 2 years ago. I moved back from Amsterdam. I had been in Boulder, decided to leave the startup that I was at and moved to Amsterdam with my girlfriend. And while there, I consulted with another startup, and eventually we realized that, we wanted to be back in Chicago, where I was actually born and raised. And so we moved back here. And upon moving back here, I met someone through my girlfriend, actually. And we both had the same sort of passion and same sort of drive for entrepreneurial ventures. And we also both were very heavily invested into cannabis on a personal and medicinal level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really when I started to explore the business aspects of legal CBD and the industrial hemp world. And there's other personal reasons. My sister passed away a couple years ago of lupus, and in the last couple years of her life, she was inundated in hospitals quite often, and I would help her with cannabis and other cannabinoid derived products to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that she felt good. And one of those was CBD, and it helped her a lot. And so this first venture that I started in the CBD and hemp industry 2 years ago, the real purpose of it was because I wanted to understand why the compound I was giving my sister provided benefit to her and seemed to improve her life.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I've talked to a lot of nutritionists since, and there was things that we could have done to possibly protect my sister from passing away as early as she did. I mean, the doctors and we did everything we could, but advancing the science of these medicines and learning more, and the research and development of these compounds is something I'm extremely, extremely passionate about. So that's really why I got into the business. And about 9 months ago, I met the founder of Everything Diesel, also known as the Hemp Foundry, which is our brand's name, through an old business partner from my financial tech days. He had invested in the company and through his venture fund. And he pointed me out and said, "You guys need this guy on your team." And so they kind of brought me under their wing and into their house. And yeah, it's been a wild ride.
That's amazing.
Yep.
That is amazing. It's really is interesting how there are so many people that are involved in the industry that that have the personal story that kind of got them over the hump and said, "Nope, this is what I'm going to do." So I'm not surprised that you had one as well. Not
I don't
surprised.
think that it wasn't that the passing of my sister is what led me into this field.
Hmm.
Because I was in this field long
Right.
before she ever got sick,
Hmm.
but it's what gives me the drive to find out more and to
Hmm.
understand more, because there are people out there that need help.
Yeah.
And with things much less serious than lupus, but it doesn't matter. CBD is here to bring your body back to homeostasis. And at least for now, that's what we've been able to understand it as. And
Hmm.
so finding out why the body reacts with this compound that way and how we can better utilize it is something I'm very interested in.
Yeah. And episode 86, which is the one right before yours, had Dr. Jim Howard out of Virginia, and he did
Not
a
my uncle.
no, no. Actually, no, wait, it's Holland. It's Holland, not Howard. Sorry, out of Virginia, and he did a really. It was a really good episode that focused on the endocannabinoid system and the immune system and the interactions. So um, it really is amazing how how your body can, I mean, the whole homeostasis thing, but I mean, all the different ways that CBD can affect the health of your body. And
Hmm.
it's, and that's why I think we get so much backlash, is because people are like, well, it's a magic bullet, blah, blah, can't do everything. It's like, well, that's because you don't understand the endocannabinoid system, So,
And even now, one thing is that we still don't understand the
true.
endocannabinoid system to its fullest extent, much like we don't understand our own brains. I mean,
Exactly.
everything we know about the human body is very, I would say, immature or in its infancy, even though we've known these things. I mean, for example, the brain for hundreds of years, but we're
Hmm.
still in the infancy of knowing what it actually can do.
Hmm.
And, one way that I like to explain to people how CBD reacts with the endocannabinoid system and how that affects your body, as of right now, to my knowledge, I'd
Hmm.
like to preface that with this. Imagine a mobile, much like mobiles that hang inside of a child's crib.
Hmm.
And imagine on each one of the strings that hangs down on that mobile is a little balancing beam,
Hmm.
and they're all over the mobile. And when you're feeling healthy and good, and you're putting good things in your body, and good is coming out, and you just feel like you're on a roll, you're in your groove, and life is going well, you're not getting sick. Um, you know, you feel as if your body is at homeostasis, it's at a balance. And when you get sick, for example, with lupus, which is an autoimmune disease, when you get sick, it goes through your nervous system and through some of your other systems in your body, your cardiovascular, your
Hmm.
nervous system, all of those systems, and it basically puts all of those beams on a kilter. It
Hmm.
tilts them. And what we know CBD to do at this point, and I am not claiming it to be the end all be all solve all to every problem, but it goes through the nervous system, the cardiovascular system,
Hmm.
and it recorrects those imbalances and tries to assist in bringing it back to balance, which
Yep.
would then be a homeostasis. So
Yep.
that's a simple way to kind of explain it to somebody.
Yeah. It's as many metaphors as we can come up with. There, we would still need more because everyone's got a
Yep.
different perception. But that's really a good one. That helps a lot. So let's talk a little bit about, it's October, it's harvest season, and
And it is.
it's really not something that we've talked about on the show before. So this is a good thing. Um, How about you just because you do have that experience that, like you talked
Hmm.
about when you were in Boulder, that of learning from seed to sale. So give us a little bit of insight about what's happening right now, with the Farm Bill having passed and gone into effect at the beginning of the year. It's a lot more people growing than there were before. So
Exactly.
let's go into that.
So as you said, last year when the Farm Bill passed, um, it was a monumental moment for the industry because this is the first time that state by state, um, these state regulators are saying, we are going to do a hemp project. This is what it looks like. And, CBD has been around prior than the, 2018 Farm Bill. But what the Farm Bill has allowed us to do is truly scale out the process and become an industrial market. See, I personally believe CBD is just a foot into a much bigger industry. And that is, that's just my opinion. I just
Hmm.
know that there are so many benefits to hemp. But what's going on specifically right now is that basically, as of October 15th, everybody is starting to harvest. And there are millions and millions and millions of pounds of biomass flooding the markets. And being the first year, and again, as we talked about earlier, being an industry that is well in its infancy, there's a lot of things that have happened this year. I have plenty of case studies of things going absolutely well, things going absolutely horribly, and just people's expectations don't usually get matched by reality.
Hmm.
Um, and that kind of goes to what we were talking about before we jumped on the show, where you had made the claim that if somebody's not already thinking about being in the CBD business or has some sort of passionate or personal connection to it, it's really not the best industry to get into, because I think socially, it's kind of portrayed as an industry that's easy to jump into and easy to understand,
Hmm.
when in fact there are a ton of pitfalls
Hmm.
and there are a ton of things that most people just don't think about, and
Yep.
everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel. And to be honest, this is not the industry to do it in, not at the moment at least.
Hmm.
So what would you like to talk about as it relates to harvest and what's going
Well,
on
what's the
around this time
harvest
of year?
process like?
So to talk about the harvest process, I think we should really talk about how we get to harvest.
Hmm.
Um, when growing indoors, which mainly this year, a lot of the crop that's going to be harvested is outdoor hemp.
Hmm.
Um, and that's just because we're in our infancy. But when you grow cannabis, a lot of the times now, because it's sold for recreational and medical sales, the biggest, bottleneck on the market is quality.
Hmm.
Dispensaries want quality, consumers want quality, and
Well,
then they want
I
it
have to
for a good
say,
price.
I'm really glad that dispensaries want quality,
Oh, of
and
course.
that they're demanding it for their customers.
But because of that demand, the cannabis markets charge a higher price for their products, as they should.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also grown indoors so that we can maintain an environment.
Yes.
When a certain strain is basically genetically hunted from a region of the world, and
Hmm.
I'm just going to use a very simple one. It's actually pretty old school and it's not really around that much anymore, but Afghani Kush.
Hmm.
Afghani Kush is obviously from Afghanistan,
Hmm.
and that is where it is temperately purposed to grow. That's where it was evolved.
Hmm.
So when you bring that strain into the US or into another legal market and grow that, when you're growing it indoors, you're really just replicating the environment that it would want to be in.
Yes.
Um, this year in the hemp process, that we don't really get that choice, because hemp is a very versatile plant. It's a very I wouldn't want to say sturdy plant, but it's resilient. I
Hmm.
mean, hemp is a very resilient plant, but at the same time it's very easy to go past that that stage of resilience and mess up an entire crop.
Yeah.
And it's easy because you're growing outdoors. In order to make hemp profitable, you need to grow a lot of it, and
Hmm.
that requires space. So, there are people growing smokable hemp flower indoors, and that's because it's being sold to a different market, the
Yes.
smokable market, which, pounds, fetch a 20x price point to what a pound of biomass would cost.
Hmm.
But going back to your original question, the harvest season really starts with the planting season. And because we're outdoors, you usually have to wait until that first frost starts to leave whichever plane you're on. So
Hmm.
in the western slopes, we usually, of Colorado, we usually don't get started planting until June, end of May, June, July, because, up in the mountains, it's still cold around that time of the year.
Yes,
And
it is.
an immature plant is not going to be able to handle the stress that an environment like that will place on it. Here in Illinois, we can get it going a little bit earlier. April, May, somewhere around there, you can start popping seeds or clones in the ground because it's going to warm up here. We're actually going to have somewhat of a spring.
Mm-hmm.
And then as summer hits, it's going to start to get very hot and humid, which is a great environment for hemp and cannabis plants. So plants, just like cannabis, the hemp plant, it goes through a vegetative and a flowering state.
Mm-hmm.
And so the vegetative state is usually the first couple months of growing. And what it needs in order to go into the flowering state is a change in the light cycles. The same way that we roll our clocks back and forward, we
Mm-hmm.
do that so we either have more sunlight during the day or less sunlight during the day.
Mm-hmm.
For cannabis plants and hemp plants, the second the sun, and I know this isn't an exact estimation because everybody says once a plant has 12 hours of darkness or more, it will start to flower. So I don't know if the threshold is actually at 12 hours. I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you, if you did it at 11 hours and 45 minutes, the plant would start to flower.
Yeah.
But the point is, the lack or the deprivation of light is actually what makes the plant start to produce flower and cannabinoid rich
Trichomes
oils.
and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. So in most places, that harvest starts to take place sometime at the beginning of October
Mm-hmm.
to mid-November. Don't get me wrong, there's places that harvest early in late September, mid-September. For example, in the Rocky Mountains, we have crops in Meeker, Colorado. We have crops in Steamboat, Colorado, or the Hayden area. And those crops were forced to be cut down a little early this year. They were ready. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't cut the plants too early.
Well, that's the thing is if you let them stay, the THC level is going to rise too.
Exactly. And so we had to cut them down because of what you just said and the fact that it was starting to frost. So that frost could kill the plant really quick.
Yeah.
So because harvest is going on right now, this is the busiest time of the year for processors like us, especially processors that are vertically integrated from end to end.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak to what we do if that would be helpful, but if not, the basics of it is that we take the raw biomass that farmers harvest,
Mm-hmm.
and we process that into a multitude of different products.
Now, so when you get it, has it already been dried?
So there's, that's something the market is currently working on. So we do have a drying facility in Moni, Illinois. Unfortunately, this year we could not get it ready in time for harvest.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our farmers had to dry their product themselves and mill it themselves. We do have a milling machine. We can mill it for them once it,
Mm-hmm.
is transported to our facility. But in most cases, product is best served, and when I say product, I mean the biomass is best served to be chopped down, hung dry on trellis in large barns with good airflow and low humidity,
Mm-hmm.
and then milled in some fashion so that you basically buck the flower from the stems,
Mm-hmm.
and then it needs to be milled into more coarsely ground or fine ground material, much like what you would put in a joint of sorts
Mm-hmm.
if you were smoking cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it can be processed correctly through one of our extraction machines.
Awesome. Very cool. So talk a little bit about the extraction process.
Well, where we left off is a good place to start. So the extraction process starts with an input. And this is true for every industry. Extraction is not something native only to cannabis and hemp. You'd actually be surprised, but some of the machinery we use is actually, used by the people who own Tropicana and who own, other orange juice processing companies, because
Mm-hmm.
the machinery and the technology are closely related. So basically it starts with biomass, and biomass is the hemp cut down that has been dried and milled and, is filled with a cannabinoid rich content. What we're usually looking for, especially in our line of work, is a high CBD certificate. Basically, we want to get a COA back from somebody that shows that this plant has, somewhere above 10% CBD. that is good for us to process. Anything below, and it becomes a not a capital constraint, but more of an efficiency constraint,
Mm-hmm.
because the lower the CBD concentration within that specific, super sack of biomass, the lower the yields are going to be. And we have to put the same inputs into the process. And when I say inputs, I mean not only the biomass, but the solvents we use to extract as well.
Right.
So doing that, a biomass extraction, what you're doing is you're running it into crude oil, which is much like the crude oil in the gas and oil industry.
Mm-hmm.
Crude oil is not going to go into your car.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to, help you drive down the street. It needs to be further refined. The only difference is in the hemp industry, some brands do use crude oil in their products, and there's
Mm-hmm.
reasons for that. If you
Mm-hmm.
want more of a earthy and full spectrum vibe, I should say, to your products,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, you might use crude oil. Hopefully, it's winterized and decarboxylated, which
Yeah.
is the second step that we go to.
Mm-hmm.
So from biomass to crude, and crude to winterized decarboxylated crude. And then we are also a finishing house. So we take that product from winterized crude to distillate, and we can do any, fashion of distillate, whether it be broad spectrum, full spectrum, tea free. And then from there, we can also take the product into isolate.
Mm-hmm.
Isolate is, as it sounds, it's a single isolated molecule. In this case, we are usually isolating CBD, but our R&D team, as well as our chemists, are currently working on the technology for CBG, CBC, CBN, and also trying to figure out how to crash CBN into THCA. So
Nice.
there's, multiple avenues that we are investigating right now, and we can also take it into nano.
Yeah.
So basically, the process that we do is we take the raw flower material and
Mm-hmm.
plant material, turn it into crude, and then if customers require, or if we require for our internal brands, we move it down the line to a distillate or an isolate.
Talk about winterization.
What would you like to know?
There's a lot of people who I can guarantee you have never even heard that term.
Okay. Well, winterization. Sorry, I just gotta turn this off. The screen keeps popping up. Anyways, so winterization is a process where basically for us, where we are removing the fats and the lipids from the crude oil, so that the CBD itself can be better extracted
Mm-hmm.
out of the crude oil and turned into a distillate or an isolate. The winterizing and decarboxylation process is basically further refining it down to more of a pure product.
Right.
It's removing and remediating the parts of the extraction process that you don't want left in there. You do not want fats left in there, lipids. Winterization is also a good method for people who end up accidentally having pesticides in their plants.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, not quote me on this, because this is not true for every pesticide, but there are a vast number of pesticides, if they're in the low ppm ranges, that can be remediated out of your product during the winterization process. So if a farmer, like let's say a farmer has a organic farm, but he's next to somebody that farms, almonds or soybeans down the
Yeah.
road, and some of, on a windy day, their spray from the pesticides that they spray on their plants makes it over to your ground, or through the water table, or through simple runoff, somehow the contaminated water makes it over to your ground.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it comes around to testing time, you're going to have pesticides in your product.
Yeah.
And most people in the market are not willing to accept that into their brands, into their retail brands. White label and private label suppliers don't really want to fill their clients' orders with things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we personally don't want to process anything with pesticides in our machinery, because, we run a clean house and the industry needs to be clean.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And if you already have somebody that is immune deficient, is that really something you want putting into their body? So,
exactly. The thing about CBD, and I will say the same for cannabis, is that you are you're giving somebody something that should benefit them. And we know very well in this industry, due to the FDA and the FTC, that claims are not something we can be making about what the product does for others. I
Right.
can make a claim about what it has done for me
Mm-hmm.
as long as I'm not advertising.
Right.
But if, for example, you have somebody with seizures and CBD or a mixture of CBD and other compounds really does work for their seizures, the last thing you want to be doing is filling them full of lead and other
Mm-hmm.
heavy metals or pesticides that could, further their sickness or their ailment.
Yeah.
So you hit the nail right on the head. Pesticides are a big no-no in this industry.
Exactly. And that's why we talk over and over and over and over again about knowing where you're getting your product from.
Exactly.
And a gas station is not where you're going to find that product. So,
Nope. Gas stations like to flip low-cost products for volume plays,
yeah.
and in order to do that, they have to, buy CBD from vendors that are selling less than or lackluster quality products.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate. Me and my business partner about a year and a half ago, we did a study where we went around to some smoke shops and some gas stations in the Chicagoland area, and we collected different brands of CBD from the shelf. And we went home and we treated it just like any other study and wrote out our hypothesis and wrote out of all of our controls and things like that. And what we were trying to do is figure out, are these bottles as advertised?
Right.
Does this bottle have, does this have 750 milligrams of CBD in it? I can tell you it does because it's ours. But the point I'm making is, after doing so, we realized that over 75% of the products that we brought home with us and had independently tested through 3 different labs,
Mm-hmm.
75% of them were not as advertised, meaning they were lower in CBD. There were
Mm-hmm.
a couple that were higher,
Mm-hmm.
which is good, but it's still
Yeah.
misadvertising and misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say they were over, I don't mean by a couple milligrams. I mean by hundreds of
Yeah.
milligrams. And then there was a couple brands that actually didn't have any CBD in them at all. It was synthetic cannabinoids, which is a very scary
That
thing
is
for me.
that's real. First of all, that mirrors what the FDA did when they have done testing. Also mirrors in a previous episode that we talked about what Dr. Oz did within a certain radius of his studio. They did the
Yep.
exact same thing, had the exact same results. Um, and the synthetic cannabinoids, basically that's spice.
Yep.
And when we had when we had David Dawson on, he explained that one of the early one of the early cannabis medications, it wasn't a cannabis, it was a synthetic, but it mimicked the chemical structure. But it was off by a leg, because if they had made the exact structure, it would have been illegal. And it was used for psychiatric reasons. But the problem is, so it would fit, like a key into a lock into the receptor, but the enzymes, because it was synthetic in the brain, were not able to release the synthetic cannabinoid from the receptor. Like typically, you plug it in, then it breaks down, then you plug it in again.
Mm-hmm.
But since it was synthetic, it was not able to break it down. The enzymes weren't, and it caused
A clog,
it clogged it up.
for
But
lack of a better word.
it caused people to it, want to kill themselves, because of the specific way that it worked. So the side effect was, thoughts of suicide. And then they were trying to say, oh, well, that's because it's a cannabinoid, so this is bad. It's like, no, it's because it's synthetic.
Exactly.
That's why. And so some of the early medications that they were trying to use a cannabis-based premise for the medication, and then they say, oh, well, it was bad. It made people want to kill themselves and blah, 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 and it increased depression and da, da, da. And they're saying, well, that's because
It was
it
a
was
synthetic
cannabinoid.
analog. It was a synthetic analog of,
Right.
cannabis,
But the
as
thing
opposed to being the
is
actual molecule.
they weren't saying the drug producers weren't saying that it was because it was synthetic. They were saying it was because it was with the cannabinoid receptor. And so they were trying to say, oh, see, cannabis is bad, which of course they're going to
That's
say.
the thing with the government. They're always trying to pass the buck.
Got that right. Got
Yep.
that right. Unless they're making a buck, and then, then it's a different
Then
story.
they're willing to keep it.
So, what would be, like if a friend came to you and said, hey, you know what? I want to try I want to try CBD. I have, I'm having a, let's say, post workout pain, muscle pain and stuff like that. If they're
Hmm.
an active person. And I just, I heard it could be good. What would you recommend as a good method for people who are otherwise healthy, um,
Yep.
but are just, they want to take care of inflammation?
Well, I would recommend a couple things. First and foremost, I would recommend a good diet.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I would recommend that they try a product along the lines of a CBD roll on that has some sort of peppermint or menthol in it.
Mm-hmm.
We actually make one through one of our internal brands called Simple Soul. And it is,
Do you have it there?
I do. It's in the house. I will get up at some point and find it for you.
Okay.
I have a couple other products here with me. I actually use that on a nightly basis because I've
Mm-hmm.
had 2 spinal fusions, and I just, my lower back is a complete mess. And so I use that on a nightly basis before I go to bed
Mm-hmm.
and after I work out in the morning. Um, Also, these right here, these are turmeric pills. They
Nice.
have CBD in them as well. I'm not sure if that is
I can see it.
focusing.
Yep,
Okay.
it is.
So these are turmeric pills. Each pill has, or capsules, I should say, each capsule has 25 milligrams of CBD.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also got turmeric in it as well. And it's got about 125 milligrams of turmeric in it. And turmeric, as you notice, this is a lesson for the wise. We're not making any claims on this packaging other
Mm-hmm.
than it's turmeric enhanced. This
Uh-huh.
is a way of branding a product and being able to sell it and talk about the benefits of it being an anti-inflammatory without championing CBD as the active compound that does that.
Ah,
Because,
nice.
and it's not a trick or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Turmeric has been known for being an anti-inflammatory for years, and
Well, and
so
that's the thing. They've done the studies on those. They've proved it. They've proven it. I mean,
exactly.
with the the FDA runs a pretty tight ship on their dietary supplement stuff. So.
Exactly. So we created a turmeric and CBD blend that's got 25 milligrams of isolate in each capsule, along with 125 milligrams of turmeric. I take one of those and rub the roll on my back, and it works extremely well for me. So that's along with a healthy diet and to keep exercising, because exercising is extremely important if you are having aches and pains.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean if you're having aches and pains you shouldn't slow down and consult a physician or a physical trainer or therapist,
Mm-hmm.
because you can hurt yourself. But I am a firm believer, after having multiple issues with my back from sports related injuries, that if you are stagnant or sedentary, the pain and the stiffness will only get worse. You need to keep moving. You need to stay active. And that's the benefit of CBD, is it allows you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the benefits that I find CBD to be valuable for in my body, it helps me to keep moving in times where I am stiff and I am in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that that's only temporary, as long as I keep moving and keep taking care of my body, good in, good out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, let's switch gears a little bit because I know that you're working on a project that is really interesting and it can help us move into the topic of dosing as well. So,
Yep. So,
equine.
yep. So I am, I this is it's kind of a long-winded idea of mine. It's been an idea of mine for a while, and it's actually something that one of our internal brands pursued before it was an idea of mine. So I'm not the founder of this idea or the first shoe in the door, but one of our brands, Simple Soul, created CBD sugar cubes for horses. And let me explain why this is an amazing product, and why, I personally am going after this product and championing this product as something that I want to move our brand with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so horses, and I'll extend into other animals in a second, but horses, are very large animals, and just like us, they have aches, they have pains, they have anxiety, um, and a lot of times they're used as working horses.
And also,
And
just like us, they have an endocannabinoid
endocannabinoid system
system.
that they do. And so, one of the things about CBD is that almost every brand runs with its staples. They've got a tincture, they've got a capsule, they've got gummies. They've got those signature products that everybody knows about, that everybody sees on the shelf, and every brand really does need those because
Mm-hmm.
they are the popular products and the forms most used for ingestion. So you don't want to miss out on that revenue, and you also don't want to miss out on that opportunity to help somebody in need with a really, really good product.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I'm most interested in, like I said at the beginning of this, is trying to figure out what other ways can we use this compound to benefit not just the lives of humans, but benefit the world around us and the other co-inhabitants that live on it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those animals is horses. I personally have probably ridden a horse about 3 times in my life, but my brother is very big into the equestrian scene. He does French riding, I believe it's called, then
Oh.
hunter jumper type stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so me and my brother have been talking about this for a while now. And I, had said to him before I even realized we were already making it internally, I said to him, I'd really like to see if we can use CBD with horses. And it turns out it works phenomenally. And this is not from my own, testing experience, but the owner of Simple Soul, his name is Jim Bostic, great man. He pioneered this brand, and this is the product that he, really draws me to his brand, is
Mm-hmm.
that it's CBD for horses. And right now it's dosed at 250 milligrams each. They are sugar cubes, very simple formulation. It's sugar and CBD isolate. And they look something like this, very simple. There was a horse that Jim and his team went to help out. The horse was an older horse. This farmer, or the person who owned the stable, owned many horses, and this older horse was the owner's favorite horse. But she was getting old,
Mm-hmm.
and she was slowing down, and honestly, laying down a lot, and
Oh.
not walking much, and just moving more into the elder stages of life where you become sedentary, not because you want to be necessarily, but because your
Aches
body
and
tells
pains.
you it's time, aches and
Yeah.
pains. But at the same time, this horse was also having anxiety issues because of it, because
Mm-hmm.
the horse realized it was no longer the strong, powerful horse that it used to be. So we gave them some CBD sugar cubes for the horse. And after about 2 or 3 doses, the owner called Jim and literally said, "You have no idea how amazing this is.
Yeah.
My horse is back to leading the pack while they run around in the pasture." So
Oh.
this horse went from sitting around, and I have videos of this. So if there's
Mm-hmm.
somewhere later, we can post the video.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as the testimonial to this actually working, be happy to do so. But it is amazing to see how something so minute and simple can make that big of a difference. And so then you brought up the dosing portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, we thought that 250 milligrams would be a minimum dose, like a threshold dose for a horse,
Because horses are
because they're
huge.
huge. Exactly. Their body weights, I mean, I don't know the average weight of a horse, but I imagine it's 10 times my weight, if
I'm
not
gonna say it's
more.
about 1,200 pounds. I would.
Yep.
Yeah.
So well, I'm not 120 pounds, so I wish I was,
But big.
um, but yeah, so point is they are much larger than us, and they eat a lot more food than us. They have different needs than us. So our original assumption was they're going to need more CBD.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually quite interesting to find out that 250 milligrams, it's not to say that it's too much, but it is not needed. They actually And I'm imagining we can even go lower than this, but we've done some testing on it, and it seems that 100 milligrams is a good base point for a horse, which for me, 100 milligrams is my dose as well.
Hmm.
I know with the turmeric capsules, the only thing I'm really going for there is the inflammation aspects,
Right.
or anti-inflammation, I should say. And I also take it with the roll-on, so I'm taking one product in conjunction with another.
Hmm.
But my usual threshold is about 100 milligrams, and therefore, I guess me and the horse have the same endocannabinoid system, or they're similar. Um, but yeah, so the point I'm trying to make here is that from a business aspect, the riches are in the niches. Or
Hmm.
niches is the correct term, but for rhyming purposes, they call it niches. Um, if you are going to pioneer a brand, you want to make sure that you do something to step outside of your comfort zone and the comfort zone of the market, and truly utilize your strengths, your passions, and your knowledge to build something that the market either doesn't already have, or that can truly benefit, if even one life, because that's
Yeah.
what it's really all about, is benefiting a life. So for me, I saw a great benefit with horses, and Jim did too, and that's why we're pioneering this brand together. But and I shouldn't say pioneering, I know there are other players in the space, but this is opening up the doors to many other things. Imagine zoos.
Yeah.
Animals are locked up in zoo cages all day, pacing back and forth. I love going to the zoo just as much as the next
Hmm.
person, or at least I used to. But now, in my older age, as I go to the zoo, I actually get quite sad
Yeah.
because, you know, um, it's such a meaningless life, and I really don't mean it to sound so morbid, but animals that live in zoos, unless they're rescues and they really couldn't make it in the wild,
Hmm.
it's sad to see them pacing back and forth in a cage. A gorilla that weighs god knows how much, pacing back and forth in a cage that's the size of maybe the park your children plays at after
Yeah.
school. um, it's sad. And so, if anything, I would like to be able to provide somewhat of a relief to these animals,
Hmm.
and somewhat of a, something to look forward to. We all know that CBD isn't going to get you high, but
Yeah.
I definitely personally do see a big effect on my anxiety when I take CBD. And I imagine these animals are very anxious and uptight and pent up. And so I'd like to help them as much as I can.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's wonderful. And yeah, I know we have in northern Colorado, we're very fortunate. We have the Wild Animal Sanctuary, which is
Yep.
hundreds of acres, and it's the people that are on the gangplanks walking. The animals have all the space, and acres and acres, and it's the people that are kind of in the cage to protect to be protected.
And
Um,
that is how it should be.
exactly, because then you really get to see them in the wild and see what they do. But
Is that the
that's
place that has wolves? And
that's
there's a place somewhere in Colorado that has wolves that you can go and look at, and they're
there's
like you
actually a
said,
wolf
out in the open.
sanctuary.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm talking about.
yeah. The wild animal sanctuary. I mean, it has wolves, but it also has the mountain lions. It has lions, like a big den of lions. It's got the bears. And they're all in different habitats and stuff like that. But it's hundreds of acres, and now they've even in southern Colorado were able to get an even larger plot of land so that they're able to help even more animals. So, but
That's awesome.
I never really thought about how CBD could help those animals, and
Yep.
that's
And I mean, the list goes on. It wouldn't just stop there. I mean, we're talking right now about horses and animals in museums, but also as a veterinary tool. At the end of the day, there are many aspects that this product can be used for,
Mhm.
and it's really up to us as industry professionals and leaders to make sure that we pioneer this journey correctly,
Mhm.
with one foot in front of the other, with the best intentions. And because there's a lot of bad players in this space, as we were
Yes, there
talking
are.
about earlier. And you know one of the things that we talk a lot about at the lab, or at one of our offices, is that to be in this space, you either have to have a high tolerance of risk, or you really have to like hemp and cannabis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, those are the only two you know factors of the people in this industry that I see succeeding, because unfortunately there's a lot of bad actors that come into this space thinking, I'm going to throw $50,000 at the wall. I'm going to get some CBD products branded up and hit the shelves in a month, and I'm going to be a millionaire next week. And who does that leave in the wake? It leaves the
Mhm.
consumer in the wake, and
Yeah.
it leaves the rest of the industry in the wake as well. Because not only are they degrading the credibility and the efficacy of what we are trying to do,
Mhm.
they're also misleading consumers that could have otherwise had an amazing experience with a compound that has already helped so many.
Yeah.
The synthetics we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Imagine if that was your first try of CBD, was a
You would never
synthetic.
try it again.
Exactly. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
that does happen. I don't have
Exactly.
a personal case study to show that, hey, Sophie
Mhm.
G tried CBD and it was a synthetic and now she never tries it again. But the point is that, you go into some of these smaller towns in more rural areas, and I have
Mhm.
done this personally, and just stop by the gas stations, and they
Yeah.
are selling CBD products that the locals in these towns have no idea, but they are not as advertised, and they're not really qualified to have any sort of shelf space. This is a product that's being ingested into humans and
Mhm.
animals' bodies. We need to take this extremely seriously.
And also, you have desperate people who are ill and who are like, this is like something that they've wanted to try, that they're hoping it's something that'll make a difference in their lives, and then it turns out to be shit, and it doesn't help at all, and then they don't go back and try a real product because they thought that they already tried it. And
Yep.
so it's discouraging them from actually getting the help they need. And I actually have had several people that have come to me and said, oh, it didn't work, it didn't work. And I'm like, let's try a different one. Let's try, let me get you to a place that has a good product that I know is real. And then if that doesn't work, then let's talk again. Because the other thing is like with different modalities. Like you're vaping right now, that helps certain things that tinctures might not, or that topical does not. When you're vaping, it's going right to your brain, lickety split. That helps anxiety pretty damn easily, you know.
Yep.
And so you got to be able to match the method with what you're trying to work with. But it just really pisses me off that
It does to me too.
there are people out there that are taking away the opportunity for someone to get help when they're at their weakest point because they want to make a fucking dollar.
Yep.
And this, uh, but hey, that's
In every emerging industry and opportunity, the same thing is going to happen.
hmm
What really needs to happen and what will happen, because we are stepped up to the plate, and a lot of other good actors like yourself are stepped up to the plate. The cream is going to settle at the top. At
hmm
the end of the day, this is the first real year of the hemp market, the first real year of the CBD market, and all of the brands that aren't fit to be on the shelves, they will be structured out of it.
hmm
And whether that's by FDA and FTC non-compliance, whether that's because consumers buy into their bullshit and then figure out it's not actually what they purchased, and
yeah
they go out of business that way. One way or another, these bad actors will slowly get remediated from the industry.
hmm
But unfortunately, new opportunities, new industries, this is always going to happen. And it's just up to those who really want to lead and develop this industry into something positive. It's
hmm
up to us to make sure that we steer the conversation and the narrative in the right direction and do everything by the book, so that we
yeah
have the ability to,
and
kind of
transparency.
fall back on our transparency and our credibility.
Yeah, and so that's something that it's good to be reminded that if you have tried it and it hasn't worked, partner up with somebody, partner up with a company that's reputable, and let them make suggestions or let them answer questions so that well, how about we try this instead, you know
Hmm.
and first of all, try a product you could actually get a COA on that means something.
Exactly.
That helps. But there are people out there that have actually dedicated their lives, like the OGs, to cannabis and the benefits of it. And there are actual organizations like the Cannabis Clinicians that are nationwide. We have a great Cannabis Clinicians of Colorado group that actually provide um, credited hours of education for doctors and nurses. So there are places that you can go for knowledge, to get knowledge. But if you don't have a good product, then all the knowledge in the world isn't going to help you, because you've got to have someone that you can go to, that you can get a product from a company that's invested in their future, that's going after the GMP, the CGMPs, and is looking at this as a dietary supplement, following the FDA rules on that or something similar, and it has has a a plan to be here 20 years from now.
Yep.
So, um, seriously, if you've tried something and it hasn't worked, try a different company and give it another shot. Go with the
Give me a
company.
call.
Yeah, there you go. Because it can change your life.
Yep, it really can.
Yeah. But until you do it, you're not gonna. Yeah, if you had a bad product, then please just try again. Um, so let's just talk, because I know we've already been talking for close to an hour, but I do want to talk about something that we talked about on the panel. We were talking about white labeling, and I want people to understand, not from a business point, point of view,
Standpoint. Yep.
but as a consumer, why it's okay to get a white label product. So first of all, a white label product is a product that is being manufactured by a company but sold in different brands. This happens all the time. This is actually what I do in the animal health world. Is I work specifically for a private label, white label division, um, and they're safe, and it's there are so many benefits to having white
So,
label products. So
so,
yeah.
so here's what I'll say as a consumer, and this kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about, pretty much this whole discussion. It's all about making sure that you're ingesting a product that you can believe in, that you trust. The brand. It's all about the brand that you're ingesting, and it's all about what that brand does to make their product. And the reason buying a brand that has been white labeled is not only okay, but a great way to go, is because that brand didn't jump into the market and say, I want to reinvent the wheel, or I want to go this alone. Because you
Hmm.
see, that is the biggest problem in business, actually. It's the reason most businesses fail, is that people get into business and they want to keep the business, their piece of the pie, as large as possible. And therefore, they don't reach out and ask for help from industry experts or
Hmm.
from people that have done this before. And this is in every single industry. And so, what ends up happening is they end up cutting corners and speeding through the process to try and catch up with the people who are already leading the industry.
Hmm.
And so, by buying a brand that has, by going to a store or going to a reputable retailer and buying a product that has been white labeled, what you're doing is you're buying a product that is past the quality control standards of the formulation lab and the manufacturer that made it.
Hmm.
So, for example, we make any number of products. Let me just grab these, for example, these gummies. These gummies right here are made in our lab, and I eat these all day. They are third party tested by 3 different labs, not only for the cannabinoid content inside, but as well as the particulates, meaning
Hmm.
heavy metals, pesticides, anything along those lines. So we've already gone through all of the steps to make sure that we're putting a compliant and safe product on the shelves. When somebody comes to us and says, hey, we'd like to, do a production run of 10,000 gummies and slap our own label on it, all we're doing is taking our formulation, which we put hundreds of man hours into developing. We're putting their label on it and allowing them to sell at retail. So you know that the product you're getting comes from a reputable, hopefully GMP and ISO compliant lab that is, fit for the job.
Hmm.
And it all kind of goes back to my original comment, is that in business, everybody always wants to keep the pie all for themselves.
Hmm.
And so that's what I'm seeing is the issue with a lot of these, one-off brands that have hit the shelves in gas stations and smoke shops, is that most likely there isn't a lot of infrastructure built into that brand. There isn't a lot of quality control. They're trying to get a product to market as quick as
Yeah.
possible. When you buy a brand that's been white labeled or even private labeled, you're buying something that has hundreds of man hours of research and development behind it that can substantiate the purchase and substantiate the efficacy of the product itself. We're not reinventing the wheel, or our customers are not reinventing the wheel. They're going to people that have a foot in this industry, know what they're doing, employ chemists, employ custom formulators, people that employ the best in the business. So I'm not saying we're the only ones to do it. There's
Hmm.
other companies out there that do it just as well as we do it. But the point is that you can trust it. There's a level of trust that you gain by going to the source.
And the other thing is companies, the companies that are manufacturing the white label, the amount of money that they have put into their organization to be able to do that makes it that they have so much to lose if they don't do it right.
Yep.
Because
That's the
people
thing.
keep.
It's our reputation. It's
Mhm.
our credibility. If God forbid, if somebody ever got sick or
Mhm.
something bad happened from ingesting one of our products, even if it was one of our white label or private
Mhm.
label customers, that falls on our heads.
Yes.
So when you're buying from a brand that has gone the whole process themselves, and I'm sorry I have to say this, but a lot of the times it happens in their garages, it happens
Yeah.
in their basements, it happens in
Yep.
these, thrown together MacGyver labs that aren't set up to do the process. You should see the work that our lab techs do every night to make sure that the next shift that comes in is walking in to a shiny, clean lab.
Mhm.
Same with our formulation labs. Those things are wiped down and cleaned to the standards of the health and safety boards in both Colorado and Illinois
Mhm.
to the highest level. I
Yeah.
mean, we take quality, cleanliness, the source from where our products come from, the products that go into our formulations. We take all of that extremely seriously because that's our bread and butter. It's what we do.
Mhm.
You know, um,
And you have a
I
lot
guess
to lose if something goes wrong.
Exactly. I guess a good way to put it is this: if you're buying a vehicle, you want to go to the dealership.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily want to buy it from a private seller, and the reason is, and don't get me wrong, there's many benefits to buying from a private seller. You might get a better deal,
Mhm.
so on and so forth. But that private seller doesn't really have the um, the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they're disclosing everything about that car
Mhm.
before you buy it. You could drive it away from his house and 5 minutes later notice that, for example, the gas cap was taped closed. When
Uh-huh.
you're buying a car, you don't go make sure that the gas cap opens and closes correctly. But if you drive off and go to get gas and all of a sudden you notice it's been super glued closed, or the point is, dealerships, they will not cut those corners,
Right.
but private sellers will,
Mhm.
because they think that they need to race to the finish line. Same thing goes in the CBD market. People really, 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 and these are the bad actors I'm talking about. They want to get a product to market as quick as possible, and they want to make green.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, we've been at this for a long time. We bite the bullet on a lot of deals and don't make money simply because we've taken extra time and effort to make sure that the product is as ordered and is
Mhm.
as advertised. The third party testing we do, not cheap, not
Yeah.
cheap at all. And those, bathroom, garage, basement laboratories, they're not doing that kind of stuff.
No.
So
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and also you with respect to having a white label product, you the economies of scale are such that when you're buying 50 kilos versus 1 kilo, you're able to actually make a product that is at a very high level. But if you did that yourself, the cost is going to be a lot different just because of the, when you're buying in quantities like that, you're able to help out. But I
Thought we
just,
weren't going to get into the business side of it,
I
Dawn.
know, I don't, but as a consumer, I mean, like you go into King Supers or Kroger, they have their brands. Trust me, Del Monte's making it.
Exactly.
with the laundry detergent. It's still Tide. Some of it's still Tide. It's Tide's making it. They might change it a little bit. And the animal pharmaceutical. Carprofen is carprofen. It can be called Rivendell. It can be called Levophen. It can be called whatever. It is what it is. And
Yep.
and so just it, don't get stuck as a consumer on, did you make this? Who where'd the product come from? Where the product come from is important, especially where it's grown. But don't um don't discount
How
a brand.
how it was manufactured because it's white labeled.
Yeah, because to be honest, it's probably a better product if it is white labeled in some instances.
And I kind of want
Because
to go back to what you said there a minute about the source of things.
mhm.
So one of the things we've been doing as a company, and it actually comes from a couple of our contacts. There was just suggestions from them. But one of the things we're doing on all of our products, starting in 2020, or at least for some of our internal brands and a lot of our white label brands, is we're going to be introducing QR codes into our packaging,
Good.
so that you can scan the package with your phone, and that will relay it to a complete chain of custody from the seed that was planted in the ground
Oh,
until
wow.
it gets to the bottle that's going in your body. So you
Jeez.
essentially by next year will be able to scan the bottle, and when it'll pull up a link on your phone, you press on the link, and that will lead you to a URL that will show you it was grown in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It was then processed in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It was then manufactured in Steamboat Springs, Colorado,
Hmm.
and then shipped to, Arvada, Colorado for
Hmm.
sale on retail shelves, or however,
Yeah.
and then also all of the COAs and third
Yeah.
party tests will be provided as well. And that way the consumer truly knows what they are getting in their
I've heard
product.
about the COAs being done. You're the first person I've heard about uh, where it comes
Chain of
from.
custody, baby. It's important.
That is awesome. I
Yep.
love that.
It's
That is a beautiful thing.
and those are the type of things that and I'm not, going to sit here and champion our company as the best players in the market. We do everything by the book, and we
Well,
pride ourselves on our honesty and
yeah.
transparency. And so as the industry, and this is, extremely prevalent in what's going on in the vape world and even in the CBD world, with all of the murky water bullshit that's happening, it's imperative that we find ways to separate ourselves from the pack,
Mhm.
not from the good pack, but from the pack of people that are putting a bad name on this industry and putting a bad name for the future of this industry.
Yeah.
So by putting that QR code on there, what we're saying to our consumers is, hey, we've got nothing to hide.
Hmm.
Check it out. This is where the product's been, and this is how it made it to your door, because that tells a story. What we're
Yeah.
doing is telling a story. So
Amazing.
it's something we can't wait to roll out.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So, all right. Well, you know what? It's getting late. I got shit to do. And one of those things is editing and posting podcasts. So we are going to just have to have Chase back another time. There's just so much to talk about, and I appreciate your knowledge and sharing everything with us. Um,
You know what I
so
would love to do?
what's
I would
that?
love to come back for a podcast and have a fun podcast where we talk about funny stories from the hemp and CBD industry. Because
Oh, that'd be awesome.
as we've been talking, I am thinking about all of the brokers that I've been in contact with that have literally taken me on a run for my money. And there are so many funny things and interesting things that can happen in a year in this industry. And literally one calendar year, you can be talking to some guy who's claiming he is a prince from Dubai, and the next day you're meeting a world-class badminton player, and he's investing in your company. The point I'm trying to get is I have literally had so many funny and outlandish encounters this past year with people in this industry that I think as a consumer or even somebody in the business, it'd be kind of a funny, narrative to talk about on one of your shows.
Let's
So
do
I'd
it.
love to come back for something like that, or honestly anything. I'm an open book. I'd love to help you kind of pursue the educational arm that you're trying to pursue here with your podcast. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I had a good time talking to you. Obviously, we've talked before and we will talk again. I'm sure we'll be on a
Definitely.
panel together in the future.
I'm sure of it too.
But
But yeah,
yeah,
well, let's do that. Sounds like a fun episode. We'll have to do that. That'd be great. So, all
I'd love to.
right. Well, let's let's look at yeah. We'll get something in the books for like either December or January because that's more of a festive time of the year anyway. So,
Yep.
all right. Thank you guys for listening and watching. If you're on the YouTube channel, we appreciate it, and we'll probably have to start Chase writing a book pretty soon with all of his stories because that sounds like that would be a fun
Mine
one.
won't be a romantic novel, I can tell you that.
it,
But
won't, it won't be Purple Haze, but
I
that's okay.
respect the hustle.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time, and until then, stay happy and stay healthy.
You said it
7,
best.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.